All right, so I get asked all the time about why that this person is getting less FPS than me, blah 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 blah. So let's see, there's no issues in the drivers. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna go through some things that I normally do to check regularly. If you're having a problem with your game or you're having a problem with low FPS, you can just want to like pause or follow on screen some of the stuff I'm going through real quick. This is just going to be a video on the fly. I get asked almost every day about why is their system slower than mine with the same components, and I figured, hey, you know what? There's a few things that could be issues as far as corrupt files on a game, and there's a few things you can do to make sure things are all cleaned up. So first of all, what we're doing is we're just going to delete out files we don't need, clean out system restores we don't need. I mean, it doesn't make sense to fix your system and then have to use a repair file that is bad from when your system was corrupt, right? Or whatever. You got to know what I'm talking about. All right, so we're done there. So now we're going to go in the NVIDIA control panel. One of the first things besides what I just did as far as cleaning things up is what you're going to do is you're going to reinstall this program with a clean install. And then what you're going to want to do is if you do something like CC and cleaner or some type of registry program, you clean out your registry files. Okay, once you do this and you reinstall all this as a clean install, you're going to want to make sure that you have this let 3D application decide, okay? This is where you want to be at. This means that when you're in game, you change a setting in game, it is affecting that game. Your desktop, you can have whatever you want. I just leave the desktop as standard. But if you go into here and you mess with settings in a particular game, and then you go to adjust it in the game, okay, so did you really adjust it in the game, or is it disabled here anyways? Even though so in the game it looks like you adjusted and it says on, but actually it's disabled here. So you're not really getting any gain in FPS, and you're not really doing anything because it's disabled here, but it's on in game, it says, but it's actually disabled in the background. Do you get it? Some people, these clickbaity guys, they do that. Oh, do this setting here, do this, change this, more FPS. Well, you go in here and you turn off anti-aliasing, then you go in the game and you put it at 16x. You're not getting any more FPS, right? It's disabled, so it doesn't do anything. So you want to be right here. Okay, another thing to do is if you have a G-Sync monitor, which I've had for years, you want to make sure this is off. One of the things is that Nvidia likes to do is sometimes they like to make these things like auto. Back in the day, they used to have this every time you install the driver, it would make it on. And I believe if you do a clean install, it'll be on. So you want to turn this off because obviously you don't want anything affecting your FPS or performance right now. You want raw, clean performance. The next thing is just double check to make sure, like my monitor overclocks from 144 to 165. The adjustment in this Predator monitor, which you can find somewhere on my webpage or I mean my YouTube channel, what type it is. If it doesn't always say right here on the screen anyways, and people ask me, is that it is actually internally set at 165. So it always stays at 165, but just double check these things, okay? So we got that. The G-Sync's off, you got your resolution where you want it to be, and you are letting 3D application decide. Okay, next thing is what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into MSI After Burner. Now you can use Precision X OC1 or 12 or whatever they're at now, which I actually use that program. I disable this. I use that to upgrade the firmware on the card if it's an EVGA card. Then I uninstall it once I have the RGB all set up and it stays locked in and the firmware's updated. Then I go uninstall it and then I go back and I use MSI After Burner. And I use it for everything. And I have 3 profiles. This first profile is default profile for the card. I mean, why would I want it? The card spinning up any extra power performance of the card for a 2D application desktop? I don't. Okay, 3D application is going to be my safe overclock zone. This card is an EVGA for the Win 3 OC card with 450 watt BIOS, which the 450 watt BIOS just allows the card to use more power basically and to go to higher temps, as you can see right here. Now, this is my overclock. This is probably close to my max overclock. I do have a 10900K now. I might be able to get a little more than I did with the 9900K. But one thing to keep in mind is drivers do perfect performance a little bit. And I think the last time I did try to see if I could take down my 9900K score versus my 10900K, I actually lost just a couple points, and it might have been due to a driver. I don't know. So this is my regular gaming profile for this card, which is basically the card factory overclock with 100 extra on the core, and that's it. And that makes it to where the card, when I'm gaming, gives me over 200 megahertz, which makes me happy for what I spent on the card. Just under that, I'm not happy for some reason. I like to be happy. Happy is if I can get 200 MHz there, I'm happy. Okay. Next thing is what we're going to do is we're going to look at one of the things that helps maintaining your higher FPS while you're gaming, and that is setting a custom fan curve. Now, if you see, I have a overclocking tutorial up with this information for basically 20 series and 10 series. The 3000 series, the 30 series, whatever, runs hotter. It just does. Okay, it's a hotter chipset. And so you can see my fan curve here. If you look back at the other fan curve, has been adjusted, and it is a little bit louder, and it's needed because the card it idles like at 44C. It's just insane, and it's just what it is. And so I adjust the curve appropriately so that I would get a higher fan curve with the higher clocks to allow me to maintain that higher FPS, which when gaming doesn't matter to me. I have a headset on and I really don't hear it anyways. And also, something they added to this beta version right here, which is what I used to do by increasing my fan curve, was I don't like when a card has a fan stop. I've had many cards, gigabytes and things like that, used to say fan stop on it, but I think it was upside down. It was annoying. But anyhow, yeah, I can't hear the fans spinning typically on these cards when it's just going a little bit. I mean, this card's different. It's a lot hotter. It runs hotter. The fans, I can hear them just barely, but I can hear them. We're normally like with the 2080 Supers, the 2080 Ti's, and the 10 series cards and all those. I couldn't hear the fans when it was on idle. But what this does here is this is a great option. So if you have MSI After Burner and you don't have the latest version, you're going to want to get the latest version and turn this feature on, and this will help keep your card cool and your whole system cool by keeping the fans from not stopping, which is a great option. I mean, fan stop is annoying anyways, and you can get to a point where your system, the temps in your system, and in your case, as to where the fan stop actually just keeps kicking on and off. It's like, vroom, 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 vroom. You know what I mean? I thought I'd do that for fun. All right, so that's where we're at right now. And these profiles are set up actually way over here in profiles. You can see 2D, stock, 3D profiles, my standard one. And then if I click down, I can go to the overclock, which obviously I'm not going to be overclocking, so I'm not, or run any benchmarks for overclocks, so I'm not going to do it. I want the card to be pretty much basically close to stock, so it does give an idea of performance overall for the card and what the card can do within reason. Than just bone stock with bone stock fans. I mean, it's a waste of money anyways to pay this much money, typically extra for a card, and not to get your extra performance out of it. And mainly the extra performance is cooling it better does help. I mean, so there's a lot of people I can mention that talk about that nonstop. And there's your version right here. So the beta 5 is going to give you that option to go ahead and do the fan override, which is a great feature and is new. All right. So we've got that done. And next thing I'm going to say is that a lot of your games, I have a lot of games because I benchmark. I have a ton of games. And I like games that are actually through something like Origin or Steam. Let's do Steam. Because I don't play the same games or benchmark the same games all the time. Sometimes I don't even play it for like 6 months to a year and only benchmark it once. So what I want to do is that I'm going to uninstall it basically. And then I reinstall it when I want to. Now, if it's something like I play a little bit regular, like Apex or Call of Duty, it's going to stay installed. And I do Fortnite with the kids, big kids now, we'll call them. So basically what it is that you can see it's uninstalled. So one thing I recommend is uninstall the games you don't have. But the main reason we're in here is because what we want to look at is a lot of these programs have where you can go in and you can repair the games. You can check for updates, which usually they're on automatic unless you go in and disable them. But you can go in here and you can do a repair, and I'm not seeing it, but anyhow, verify game files or repair. What you're going to want to do is you want to do the steps I did before. You want to go to the game you're having problems with, and you want to go ahead and do that. Now, one thing to look at is your problems only with that game, or is it with all games? That is one issue to look at. I'm trying to think of what else to go through. Okay, one thing that can affect your system a little bit is going to be how much RAM you have installed. So, if you have like 8 gigs of RAM, you're going to get dinged on FPS most likely. 16, I'd say it's not much of a difference between 32, but you got to look at how much stuff is running in your background. I mean, if you have just a ton of stuff running in your background, you're going to want to do like in old school days for me is when, I didn't, older systems, you didn't have as much RAM, you didn't have as many cores. So when things are being used up in the background, you go in and you disable them. Here, I don't have to disable anything on my system. I mean, I got 64 gigs of RAM, which I actually want 128 because this new board I've had probably for a couple months now supports 128, but I'm debating if it's even worth it because of DDR5 might be coming out, but I don't think on the next board. And so it may be worth it for me to go ahead and go to the 128. But to tell you the truth, the 164 is good, but also at the same time, you got to look at, I do video editing, processing, right? You're looking at my videos. That's why everybody's like, oh, you got way too much RAM in your system. Look, numbnuts, I do video editing, so I don't have too much because I can actually use all of that up. And I've seen it all used up before. So for 128, it'd be worth it for me. The key is getting it at a decent price and getting the same speed or higher speed, not a slower speed. And I have stepped down in the past for a slower speed. Because one thing to look at is when you have RAM, system RAM, and you want to add to it, in the olden days, you would just add to it a similar RAM speed, not even the same brand. These days, because you have what they call an XMP profile, which is an overclock that is certified factory for those DIMMs all to work at that specific speed, you can't mix and match because they're not all certified to work together. You might get lucky, but to get the overclock speed, you need to get whatever the kit came as certified to run. Because somebody like G-Skill or Kingston HyperX, they're certifying these 4 sticks of RAM or 2 sticks of RAM are going to perform at this speed. And if they performed at a better speed, they probably would have labeled those and sold them for more money anyways, if you're getting it. So they're not going to perform much more over what you're getting it at anyways. So one thing to do is look at your processes in the background of your computer. I have a lot of them I hate and a lot of them I used to disable. And these days I don't worry about most of it for 90% of the time. And it really doesn't affect my gaming because of, I got 2 M.2s. They're extremely fast. They're 2 gigabytes. I've got 10 cores, 20 totally with the threads, and 64 gigs of RAM. I mean, it would have to be a major thing going in the background to affect my gaming any more than what it would be affected by it. Another thing too is look at when I'm running system benchmarks. I'm not going to have anything major running in the background that would affect the benchmark, but I am going to have everyday processes going on the system. And that would be standard because if you were to get the same hardware and use the same hardware, you're expecting the performance level to be at a certain level with Windows running, obviously, and some background processes going, just not extra hardcore ones. So basically, we'll do a recap on this. What you're looking at doing is you want to go in and you want to go ahead and delete files off your system. Maybe take out some system restores because it would suck to go ahead and do all your repair on your system and then turn around and have to restore back to a point that has not been fixed, right? So you might as well get rid of those. And I'm going to say I have the system restore turned on only for the system drive, but I don't use it. I actually have a system imaging that I use with Windows and backup files, actually a couple of them, and I just re-image. So and that just cures all problems because it re-images it back to before anything bad happened, if it did happen. Another thing is I have very high internet speed. Um, I'm Comcastic is what you might say. I just hate that the upload and the download speeds are so off. They're so dramatically different. I'd rather Comcast made them the same. But anyhow, so you can go in and take out some things in startup. It's not really going to matter. So what I'm looking at here is your biggest difference in performance and squeezing out is going to be to go ahead and overclock your card and to try to cool your card so that as you're gaming and it gets hotter and hotter, that you're maintaining your higher FPS and it's not dropping off by basically turning up the fans through the software. You can add case fans. I have $500 worth of case fans. Pretty weird, and they're not RGB. I didn't even mess with it at the time. I didn't want all the extra wiring. They're good fans. They're Corsair. You can see them on one of my videos, showing my system. They're actually running at standard speed now for the BIOS setup of the motherboard. I can put those to turbo mode. I can put them on to 100%, and I can put them on to silent. I've been running it silent for a couple of years, but because this 3080 runs hot, I put them on standard and move a little more air through the case. So these are things to look at. Airflow through your case, the GPU's fans itself and controlling them like with this fan curve and adjusting it. And I recommend playing with the fan curve. Typically I start with a 50-50, so 50 fan, 50 temp, and then I'll take it up gradually from there and down from there. And then I would turn this on. It's like a no-brainer why let your fans spin a little bit the whole time to keep things cooled and let the system heat up and have the fans stop. It's not enough power. It's annoying if the fan stop goes on and off. Yeah. So that's about where I'm at with that. So do that and go in here and overclock. I would say recommend doing at least 2 profiles. Do a profile 1, let it go basic. Have that so when you're in your desktop, the GPU is not doing anything, the system is not heating up, and go in and set a fan 2 with maybe a little bit extra on the cores and the memory. There's a lot of research you can do easily online to find out where you need to be at. And I'm going to tell you right now that one thing to look at is when you say you have an identical system, you may mean 10900K, but do you mean EVGA 3080 for the Win 3 Ultra card with a 450 watt BIOS installed? Probably not. You're saying 3080. If you don't have the same 3080, that could be all the difference there. Each manufacturer clocks their card different. Now, all the chips are pretty much the same within a certain amount of performance. Some will go a little higher, which they call a lottery GPU, versus others that aren't. What I recommend is looking at your individual card, trying to find some information on it. I have an overclocking video. I recommend using that overclocking video, just adjusting the fan curve for the 3080 instead of what I have for the 2080 or the 1080 Ti's. And all I'm saying there is make it a little more aggressive to start with. That's it. And if you check out that video, which I'll put a link down before, it's actually, I think new subscribers see it, or returning subscriber, you'll see it right there at the top. So once more, we'll recap again. Go in, delete system files, clean them out, remove system restores you don't want, run a registry cleaner. If you have Norton, be careful with the registry cleaner. That registry cleaner can take out files you need versus CC cleaner where you have a better look at them and you can just skip it. Next thing is go in, verify your game files, or repair, or reinstall your game, reboot it, then run it. If everything seems fine, and you're good. Another thing also as a key factor is remember with your control panel, don't mess with your control panel settings. Keep it where it's 3D application controlled by the game. That way each individual game, your settings are adjusted there within the game and you know what's going on. You got to look at it. If I go in and disable something in the control panel, then I go into the game and I turn it on. Is it really working? It's disabled by Nvidia, right? So you're not getting more FPS. It's not working. You're not getting anti-aliasing to 16x because you disabled it, or you only got it set to 8 in the control panel. So watch out for those videos. Those are the scammers. 1,000 more FPS. The more FPS you're going to get is by overclocking your card. A little bit by drivers, not a whole lot. And adjusting your resolution or your gaming settings. That's it. I mean, the little GPU, whatever you have, is only going to do so much. It's not going to grow a couple extra cores or anything like that to do better. It's designed to do a certain speed only. So there's no magic button or anything for that. It's just overclocking it and cooling it. So that's about it. Hopefully this video may be a little dry, a little boring, not enough things flashing around on the screen. Actually, I could probably put something in the corner, keep people entertained. That's it. All right.